Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for a live reaction of the Chelsea 5, West Ham United 1, or the other way around, as I should say, because we won away from home at the London Stadium, and thankfully we have finally managed to bag ourselves a first win of the season. I'm very happy. 5 goals. West Ham are absolutely terrible. But after the first, 15, 20 minutes, I thought, oh boy, what is happening here? We went 1-0 down, scored an equaliser. I was like, thank God we weren't training for too long. We conceded immediately again, but thank God offside or VAR, whichever one you want to call it, saved us. And after that, it was kind of, well, way too easy. I am very glad to be joined by 2 wonderful guests. I'll start with you, Ollie. Thank you very much for being back on. And I'm very glad to be chatting to both of you on such a wonderful occasion as beating West Ham 5-1. What a perfect way to start a weekend. Having a Friday night game, winning it 5-1. Lovely. I could not be more happy right now. What about you, Ollie?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Hello, chat. Hello, Bertram. Hello, Loz. It's good to be here. Yeah, for a minute, I thought we were going to be sitting here having a bit of a moan and a complaint, especially when that second goal from West Ham that was disallowed went in. I thought, oh no, we're going to be having a therapy session today. But you know what? We managed to turn it around pretty emphatically within the first half, really. Second half, won it at a canter, scored a couple extra goals without even really trying. West Ham, absolutely abysmal. We were good. I wouldn't say we were perfect. I think we were good enough to beat West Ham 5-1, which I think now that we've seen their first 2 games of the season, I don't think that would have taken all that much. But still, credit where it's due. You still got to put the goals away, especially in the first half. I think scoring that third goal really kind of put the game to bed. So, you know, we made it look comfortable in the end, which is a good sign for a team that we should be beating like them.
100%. We should be beating them. Obviously, West Ham losing their first game of the season 3-0 away at Sunderland. And as much as we won 5-1, we could have easily scored a 6th or a 7th in the second half. Like Estevao had a big chance. There was a couple ones later on. But at the end, it just felt like, I don't know, we didn't want to go too... I don't know. We obviously made a lot of subs, you know, felt like we took the foot off the gas. Bertram, first of all, thank you for joining us once again as well. Appreciate it very, very much. You are the optimist. I was talking to you last week about coming on last week's stream, and unfortunately you weren't available. And you told me you're predicting a 2-0 win. Unfortunately, that didn't quite come true. But thankfully, the win did come true today. So maybe it's all your fault for not being available last week, really. But at least you turn up today. So we got the 3 points. Are you happy? I assume you are.
I'm very happy. I guess I'll just have to come on more often. But first of all, hello, Laurenz and Ollie and chat as well. It's great to be back, especially for an occasion like this. I thought we were very impressive today. I was very, very happy. I think we all saw those first 5 minutes and thought, okay, oh God, we're back to the last 2 seasons or even 3 seasons of mediocrity with the gold. But credits to the team. It feels like something's maybe changed since the Club World Cup triumph. It seems like we maybe have some more grit in this team. I think the lack of maybe a proper leader in those first 10-15 minutes was very obvious. No Reece James on, no Cole Palmer on, which did worry me slightly. But I think one of those things that that's prevalent today is the fact that we were able to score 3 goals from corners. I think that's something that will be very important going forward, because even though the goals came thick and fast today, if we have more of those tough away games, I think corners and set pieces in general will be very important to us. But even though we tried our best to be negative in the group chat as well when the first goal went in and the second disallowed one, I think something special is brewing. And even us, the maybe most negative group chat of Chelsea of Chelsea fans,
it's pandemonium in there when we concede.
Yeah, it
is absolutely.
I swear, some guy plays his first minutes after like 4 months injured, and someone is like, "This guy's looked ass all game." It's so funny. But I mean, you kind of took. Well, you didn't take anything away, but you kind of hinted at the first talking point of the game already. This was the lineup that we turned up with. But there was a big change because this guy, Mr. Estevao Willian, we have to go with the numbers, by the way, because if we go with pictures, I'll show you. There's no picture of Estevao. So we'll go with the numbers. Unfortunately, he was kind of drafted in 10 minutes before kickoff, or maybe 15 minutes before kickoff, because Cole Palmer, excuse me, seems to have picked up some sort of niggle injury issue in the warm-up and had to come off. Now, the way he was walking off, it really looked everything but serious. It was supposedly very much precautionary, but Estevao came in, and that was then the lineup that we went with. Ollie, what did you make of the lineup? Obviously, when the lineup came out, we weren't really sure. Initially with Palmer, obviously, instead of Estevao, we weren't really sure, is Pedro Neto going to be on the right? Is Palmer going to be the right winger and Gusto's going to overlap? Like, how's it going to play out? But the big surprise, I guess, other than Palmer being injured, and obviously touch on that as well, was Delap and Joao Pedro both starting together. So what did you make of the lineup? And obviously, I guess, what did you make of it to begin with? And what do you make of it after the fact?
Well, to begin with, I guess with assuming that Palmer was in it at the start, I was feeling reasonably confident. I said this morning in the group chat actually that I said we're winning 5-0 today. Now we won 5-1 in the end, but we'll get to why that is in a minute, I'm sure. But yeah, I was generally pretty confident when I saw that. Then when I saw Palmer got injured, and he's out, Estevao's in, I still felt pretty confident, to be honest with you, because for me, Estevao, much like Palmer, is kind of that difference maker player. Just someone who can do almost anything if he tries it. And I'm so impressed with this kid. He's so young, and yet he's so ready already for the Premier League. I was fully expecting it to be more of like he's going to take a few months to bed in, and he's going to struggle, and maybe for most of the season he's not going to be that impactful. But he looks excellent every time he plays for us at the moment, and he's just got here, really. So I was actually really excited to see him come in, to see a bit more of what he could do today, and he really impressed me in a big way, especially for someone so young. So yeah, was still confident. I was confident at the start of the game before Palmer was injured. I was confident after I knew Estevao was coming in, and I feel vindicated in that confidence now for the scoreline.
Fantastic confidence all over the shop, really. But yeah, I mean, we'll get into Estevao, I'm sure, in detail a little bit more later. But my God, what a player. I mean, he should have scored today. He should have scored last week. So unfortunately, that first goal is still evading him, but got his first assist today. And that run, I saw someone tweet, I was just imagining what Maresca would have done after that Delap layup. I was like, that is kind of funny. Bertram, I get to you. What were your thoughts on this team? Like I say, Delap and Joao Pedro both being in the team. No Jamie Gittins, playing kind of the shape that we played in the Club World Cup, in the sense of rather than having an inverted fullback, having them overlap and the right winger coming inside. Of course, it was meant to be Palmer. In the end, it was Estevao. But yeah, I mean, I like it. It also was an interesting one. Little plug to my podcast with CFCPys. Link is down in the description. New episode will be out tomorrow. We spoke about it last week in the last episode. Pies brought it up. Are we using Enzo too high? Should he be playing deeper? Funnily enough, all of a sudden he plays deeper today. Was he better? Was he not? Scored a goal, that's for sure. Yeah, Bertram, what did you make of the lineup? What did you make of, I guess, how it played out?
I thought it was really interesting to see both Joao Pedro and Delap start together. I think it worked very well. I think credit to Maresca for seeing it. It's not something that I thought we would have been seeing this early in the season, but I suppose when we're playing some of these teams who have a deeper block, I think this is something we'll maybe utilize more. I think Joao Pedro was very good at coming deep as well. I think for one of the chances, he was almost, he was deeper than Enzo in a sense, with one of the passes through to Cucurella. So I think the interchangeability worked really well. I think the physicality of our team as well, when we played with these two guys, was really impactful. And, we can see that by the type of goals we scored. But other than that, I think I want to touch upon Estevao as well. Like Ollie said before, I thought this was going to be one of those, kind of like with Callum Hudson-Odoi under Sarri, when, we can all see the talent is there, but, he has going to have to take some betting in. Maybe we'll even first start to see him start for, after January. But extremely impressive as an 18-year-old to be told on such short notice. What was it? Almost 10 minutes before we had to walk out that he was starting, and to go in. Maybe a bit shook up. I would say he plays a large part in West Ham's first goal with the flick. To be able to, on top of that, go and perform the way he did, get a great assist, I think something we can't sleep on. So in general, I think a good team, and very interesting for Maresca to switch it up, this much from the Palace game.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I quickly need to just react to Fioretti. Excellent as a stretch. It doesn't keep the width placed too narrow. As you can see with the lineup that we have on screen, he might have been officially lined up as the right winger, but he was not really playing as the right winger in possession. His position was being inside.
He's
that
like
was
a right-sided attacking midfielder almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was quite literally the plan. Fair enough if you didn't like your fire red, but it was certainly instruction from the manager. Now, Bertram, I'm very glad to have you on this one particular stream, because I feel like I am very glad that I can speak to a goalkeeper about this first goal, because I feel like I feel like there's going to be some people that are going to try to tell me Sanchez has absolutely no fault to take for this first goal. And
The
I
old
feel like
Kepa unsavable crowd, huh?
Exactly. But we'll see what Bertram says. Bertram, what did you make of that first goal? Obviously, you touched on Estevao's flick being a bit unnecessary. We can also definitely talk about should Caicedo have closed him down, should Joao Pedro have stopped chasing, a bit of misunderstanding between the two. But even after all of that happens and after we don't close him down soon enough, shouldn't Sanchez save that? I feel like if he saves it, it's a good save. I'm not saying it's standard, but I feel like you should save it.
Well, I feel like there's a different way of looking at it. I think there's some goals you should save. There's some goals that are mistakes, and there's some you could save. The thing with this goal is I don't know if I want to place blame on him. The thing I was thinking when I saw it was some goalkeepers maybe don't concede this goal. I don't remember, probably an Allison conceding this goal, or maybe a Nick Pope as well. That being said, I think there is something to be touched upon around the fact that it swerves. It is a really, really good shot. I think when you saw, the angle from behind the goal, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it kind of swerved, so that's why he took it with his one hand. The thing is with, when I watch Sanchez is there are so many things he's very, very good at. I think his athletic saves are very good. I think his, box commandment is very good. I just sometimes think I think he sometimes flaps at it in a way. He looks like he's playing on a trampoline in a sense sometimes. You can even see with the goal in the second half. He looks very elasticated in a way. And I think sometimes he might make a simple save look more difficult, and I think he probably could have saved it. But realistically, I think it would be very tough to criticize him for this goal, in my opinion.
Yeah. I hear that as well, that it's maybe one of those goals that he could have saved rather than that we should use the word should have saved. But, this is, I guess, the whole point with where a lot of fans' criticism for Sanchez comes from. Obviously, in our kind of anger and in our frustration, we say he's absolutely dog shit. We know he's not the worst goalkeeper in the world, right? But the problem is that he's not that little level extra that you kind of need him to be. First of all, to be secure for top four, but also if you really want to push on. And I think exactly conceding those kind of goals is exactly why he's not that level. And that's kind of where my frustrations come from. He made a super save later on in the game. It wouldn't have actually stood anyway. The game had been stopped already, but the volley, the shot got taken regardless. And he made a really nice save to tip it over the bar. And that's just Sanchez in a nutshell, where you're like, sometimes you make a super save. Sometimes you just don't save a shot that where I feel like you should have saved it. And sometimes you just have an absolute howler. It's just whatever. I also found it quite funny that like all these years that we had Kepa and every time we conceded the long shot, we're like, it's because the keeper's too small. Now we have the biggest fucking lanky twat in goal and we still concede long shots. So, yeah.
That's because the long thing is his brain, Laurenz.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you got Kepa-sized brain, I guess. Ollie,
I think there is something to be said for if I can just quickly, I think there's something to be said for the goal last week, though, the disallowed one. I think that was an absolute howler. And it's not good having controversy surrounding your goalkeeper.
You mean just positioning, right? More than anything.
Everything. It went through him. I think positioning is fine. It just went through him. I think for a goalkeeper of any quality, especially Premier League quality, should be saying that.
There you go. Fair enough. Ollie, what did you... I mean, obviously, if you want to touch on last week's disallowed goal as well, please do. But mainly on today's goal, did you think he should have saved it? Do you think it's one of those that he could have saved? Where do you stand on it? Or do you put the main blame on, say, Caicedo or Estevao for the flick, I guess?
So I think I would agree with Bertram, and I'm going to defer to him on thinking that it's something that he probably could have saved, but maybe wasn't always expected to. He's the goalkeeper at the end of the day. He knows a bit more about this stuff than we do. And that's kind of what it looked like to me anyway. So I'm happy to defer to his judgment on that one. I thought, and I said this to you at the time, in fact, I got slightly confused with numbers on the back of the shirts. I thought it was Trevor who wasn't the one closing him down and not Caicedo. I thought Caicedo, who is the one who couldn't chase him down in midfield. I think that's really poor from Caicedo, personally, uncharacteristically so. I think he should have been there to get there, especially when players aren't stupid. They know who they're playing against. Paqueta, we know what he can do from range, right? Caicedo should be seeing him get into range there and going to snap him one. Do the Caicedo thing he does where he wins the ball and gets a yellow card anyway. There's lots of good opportunities there, and he's sort of backing off, didn't go across, and then before you know it, you're letting him get in range of Sanchez anyway, which is the mistake, really. Then obviously Sanchez struggles to get there. Yeah, other people also having a bit of a silly one in that moment. I think Gusto probably should be back a bit sooner than he is to help cover on the right-hand side. Like you say, Joao Pedro probably should have been more supportive as well. Overall, it's one of those. It's like it's one mistake from one of your better players, and then it's a goal which is like, well, like sometimes those ones go in, So I'm not going to give him too much grief on that. I think, like you say, it's probably still indicative that he's not the best keeper in the world, though. And I think if he does save that, it looks not dissimilar to the one he saved in the second half.
Yeah,
that people were calling like a worldie save. So, I
that's
don't
why I'm
know if
also
you can be
slightly
fully
disagreeing with
expected.
what Crispy said here. I mean, obviously, in the end, you can say because he didn't save it, he did use his wrong arm. But like Ollie just said, he kind of tried to do the same thing, and once it worked and once it didn't. I just think he misjudged the curl on the ball. I just think he got it wrong, and it curled away from him more than he thought.
The thing that annoyed me more, to be honest with you, was the second goal. The second disallowed goal from Sanchez when that went in, because he's parrying the ball back out into danger. You can't be doing that as a goalkeeper. It's got to go left, it's got to go right, it's got to go up, or you've got to hold on to it. But you can't go straight back out into the box like that. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was actually going to stay on that goal, kind of focus on the kind of negatives or the defensive issues that we had to begin the game. Despite obviously scoring the 1-0 through Joao Pedro after 15 minutes, let's just stick to obviously that goal that in the end got disallowed by Niklas Füllkrug. Yeah, that was just really bad defending as a whole, wasn't it, Bertram? Obviously, like I say, in the end, it didn't count because I forget who the player was that was offside, but
Tadibo.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was Tadibo. There you go. He was offside, so obviously the goal didn't stand. But the defending for it was a bit of a shambles. It's really difficult for those kind of things to like pick out an individual. Is it like you said earlier, like missing a leader in that moment on the pitch that calms it down? Wasn't kind of Tosin supposed to be that? If we had Achampong on the pitch, maybe I would have understood that a little more.
He had a poor game too, didn't he? Really, Tosin overall.
Yeah, not a great one anyway. I'm not sure if I go poor, but
I don't think anyone has a poor game when you win 5-1. But he was probably not our standout today.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. I do agree with that for sure. But yeah, it was just like I say, I can't really pick out an individual for that goal that didn't stand in the end. It was more a defensive calamity, which is kind of what worries me much more. Now, obviously, you don't want individuals to make errors either, obviously, but I don't know.
At least
when
with
it's
that,
like
the problem's
just a
easy to diagnose, isn't it? Like you're like, that's the
I don't
problem.
know.
Don't do that again.
Yeah, exactly. Like we had a lot of goals like this that we conceded in the Poch season, and then last season we had like a few games where we just conceded these goals where it just felt like we just defend like a bunch of under 12s. It's just like we're like a bunch of idiots, and it's kind of like we kind of fell back into that, but thankfully didn't stick around with those problems for too long. Today, obviously, got saved by VAR. What do you make of goals like that when we concede those, Bertram? Is that to you just lack of experience? Is it, I don't know, is it like, okay, we had a bad start, trying really bad to get back into it, overexcitement? Is that again lack of experience? Like what do you put just such collective defensive howlers down to, as they do sometimes happen to us still?
To be fair, I'm watching it back now, and Sanchez doesn't tear it. It's a block. I think.
Apologies.
Yeah, the goalkeeping union stepping up. I think, to be honest, the two goals we conceded were more or less, for my money, maybe I'd say they were pretty random. To be honest, it's like that one Frank Lampard clip when he was like an average goal, another average goal. I think, to be fair, a long shot, which is it is what it is, and I think a cutback which is blocked, saved, and then shot in. I think maybe you could say the clearing should be a bit further away. Maybe Gusto should close down the man a bit before, but I'm not gonna judge it too harshly. I think it's just one of those random goals, to be honest. I was a bit more worried about the Wilson chance, when late in the second half. I thought that was terrible defending when we'd switched out pretty much the whole back line. But on this goal, to be honest, I think it's just pretty random.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I hear that as well. It's obviously a lot of fans never like the explanation. It's just a bit random, a bit unlucky. They happen. In reality, that's just what happens in football. And there was a couple of occasions, one where Caicedo cleared it off the line or blocked it off the line, for example. There is a very similar situation to that in the end disallowed goal, but just someone gets their leg in it, and then on another occasion, no one gets their leg in it, and that's just kind of how it happens sometimes, I guess. But yeah, it's true. At least we don't have the West Ham keeper. You know, it could always be worse. You can never forget
could
that
have
it
had.
could always be worse.
Yeah, we were looking
were
at him at
linked to
one
him.
point, weren't we?
Wasn't he Hermanson the guy that was at Leicester with
Yep.
with Maresca? Yeah, well, that's gone well. So
And he's going to get called up to the national team on Monday.
Oh, did he? Okay, his first one.
He will.
He will. Okay, there you go. But he has been in the national team for a while, right? It's not new.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. But I guess with that, you know, obviously because Bertram brought up the kind of one dodgy moment, I suppose, from the second half as well, I guess we can now look and focus on the positives and focus on the attack. And you can see it there. Mr. Joao Pedro, 2 assists, 1 goal. Do we need to scrap the Simmons deal and just consider Joao Pedro as a number 10? Because what on earth was that? Now, obviously not because he scored all those other goals from striker, but a goal to begin with, a crucial goal, putting us obviously level at that point. And then 2 assists. I think the headed assist, he tried to get it on goal and it kind of just ended up falling to. Which goal was that? Wait.
Chalobah.
Was it the Chalobah goal?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Must have been. So yeah, but in the end, the fact that he gets 2 assists, gets a goal. I mean, it's a brilliant start for him. I'll go with you first, Ollie. Has it at all kind of changed your mind? Okay, he should be playing 10 all the time now, or do you like the fact that we'll sometimes see him as the 10, sometimes see him as the striker? Of course, if the Xavi Simons and Garnacho deals go through, you'll probably see a lot less of Joao Pedro playing in the 10, I suppose. I would guess. I could be wrong. But yeah, it was certainly a lot more effective than he was last week against Palace, obviously.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think he's a very versatile player that can play in a lot of versatile positions. You know, in a versatile system like Maresca likes, where things can tinker and he can change it up. We know he can play a little bit off the left, but he's mostly best as sort of a 10 or a striker. I actually thought when we signed him that signing him at striker was a mistake. I was thinking actually you don't want a player like him at striker. You want him dictating stuff from a bit further back. Sort of in that number 10 position. But he then shut me up with his performances at the Club World Cup, where he turned into a bagsman. So, I was ready to assume that I was just completely wrong about that. And he scored so many goals, loads more goals. It seems at a higher rate for us than he did for Brighton when he played further back. So maybe him being further, closer to the goal, actually does add something to our attack, because he's one of those players who can score a goal from a lot of different positions. Having said that as well, I thought he was very good today. He was making good passes, dictating stuff, dropping deep. He just seems like he's an all-around quality player. He reminds me a little bit. He seems to me a little bit like everyone said Havertz was for us, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That sort of
to be honest, last
but
week
also
I said it felt like watching Havertz play up front when I watched him.
Yeah.
But today that was in a good way. Yeah, I agree.
He is kind of like, he does strike me as like a slightly better version of Havertz, or like a Havertz that transitioned better from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. Like the way he kind of plays between those positions. But whereas Havertz was okay at both, but great at neither, I think Joao Pedro is genuinely very good at both. So, it's a very, very good scouting opportunity once again. Like you say, at the same time, it's West Ham, so he was going to dance through them no matter what. But I think it was a good performance from him today. I think him or Estevao deserved man of the match for me.
Yeah, I would probably go along with one of those two for sure. It also says here that he's won the most duel in the game, which is very interesting, with 9 as well, which is pretty good going from him. Obviously, only misplaced 4 passes. Can't complain with that as a number 10, 21 out of 25. It's very good. 1 out of 3 shots on target, 1 out of 2 dribbles. Had a successful cross as well, which doesn't happen that often. 3 out of 7 ground duels, 6 out of 8 aerial duels. Didn't see the 6 out of 8 aerial duels necessarily, but still fascinating. I mean, Bertram, what did you make of him today, and what do you make of Joao Pedro as a whole, especially within the conversation of striker, number 10? Do you like the fact that he's both? Would you kind of prefer to stick him in one position more than the other, so you can kind of perfect that position rather than being good at both, if you will? It's interesting. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but FOTMob nowadays do physical stats. So they do distance covered, running meters, sprinting meters, whatever. I'm not sure how long it takes them after a game until it comes up. It's not there yet. So let's hope it turns up before we finish this stream. But yeah, what did you make of Joao Pedro, Bertram? And what do you like him as a whole? Like maybe comparison with Jackson potentially? Like do you see more in there? Do you see less in there? Where do you stand on it, bro?
I think in terms of Jackson, I think he's a bit more, like a striker, where Jackson's more like a winger, a link-up player. In terms of everything else, I really love Joao Pedro. I think one of the things, a lot of the Brighton fans said, which a lot of them are very disappointed that they let him go for the price that they did, is he's a very clutch player, which is something we saw, during the summer. I think in terms of his position, I would still ideally like him to play striker. I think that's his best position, but I think it's a credit to him that he's able to play the position he played today. I thought he was good, but I don't think this is his natural position is where he's going to be playing a lot. I think having the option of playing him and Delap and them working well is going to be very good for us, but I still view him as a striker, and I still think we were luckily ahead today, but I still think we're a bit light in the winger department, and I would really, really like us to sign Xavi Simons before Garnacho. Probably won't happen, to be honest. I think it's going to be the other way around, but I still think we're a bit light offensively. In terms of Joao Pedro, I think he was excellent today. It was another Brazilian who got man of the match, who was also very good. But just in terms of pretty much everything, this guy's a nuisance. And like Ollie touched upon, I think he's a better Havertz in a lot of ways. If only he can get a bigger goal than Havertz has for us, I think he'll be good.
I think he'll struggle without getting a big individual goal. I can't lie, but hey, hopefully something big to live up to, I guess. I kind of love this comment by Tabu, who says, "I'm glad we won, but this result does not feel satisfying. It just felt like a Conference League game." This is what Man City feel like every week. This is, not last season, but usually. This is what Chelsea felt like when we won the league under Carlo Ancelotti. We battered everyone 6-7-0, bro. When you're really good, all the games feel like Conference League. That's the whole point.
No, but I know what he's saying, though, with the quality of opposition in particular with West Ham, because they do seem really poor. Obviously losing 3-0 to Leeds on the opening day of the season is not a good indictment, because Leeds are going to be in a relegation battle this season, and they absolutely trounced them. And then to come here, you're looking for sorry, we went to them obviously, but you need a response, and that's what they served up. It's not looking good already for their season.
Yeah,
relegation, 100%.
Looking quite poor. Bertram, gone. What were you trying to say?
I was just saying, I think they'll be relegated 100%. Very early prediction. I think they'll go down.
Yeah, I was before the start of the season. I was like, no, it'll just be whatever 3 teams came up will go down, because that's what just happened the last 2 seasons. I thought the gap would have grown too large, but 2 games in, West Ham are really making me question that logic because they just, they really are terrible. And I guess we'll see. I mean, there's obviously a lot in it, because obviously they might sack Graham Potter fairly soon, and then everything can obviously change. But them losing Kudus and not really replacing him, I guess Paqueta coming back from that weird betting ban that now all of a sudden he got charged not guilty for anyway. I guess that got a player back, but in a way they lost their maybe second best player after Bowen and didn't really replace him. So yeah, obviously in a sense you can't be surprised that they're struggling. But like I say, just sack Potter, get someone proper in, everything changes. I thought before the season started that Brentford were a big candidate for going down, losing Frank, losing so many important players, losing Mbumo, losing Norgard, losing so many players. I felt that really could be that for them. But hey, it might well also be West Ham. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Estevao. As Bertram has just told us in our private chat here, he won the man of the match today, which is also quite nice. Like I say, I probably would have given him to Joao Pedro rather than Estevao. Had Estevao scored that chance that he had, for sure his. But there you go. At the end of the day, you can still see that everybody is impressed. And everybody's like, who is this kid? Because, like I say, I made that joke earlier that I read the tweet. What would Maresca have done with that layoff from Liam Delap? I mean, my God. Bertram, speak to me. I mean, you kind of touched on it in the beginning. It's... Honestly, I know you kind of compared it to Hudson-Odoi, but obviously Hudson-Odoi was in his own country, at his own club, and coming in kind of slowly in the beginning. The fact that Estevao, as much as he obviously had this kind of lead-up, build-up time of knowing he's going to come in and preparing himself and getting prepared and everything else,
I don't know, man. I've not seen an 18-year-old move like that other than Lamine. I can't lie. I have not seen it otherwise. I feel like I've not watched every 18-year-old. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like
I'm pleased to hear that, Loz.
And yeah, that's true. And brilliant. Cheers, Ollie. The confidence and the fearlessness and just I don't know. I feel like you can just see the quickest way to see if a player is a good player is to just see their average touch. And I'm not saying every touch has to be perfect. Every player, even if you're Messi, sometimes you have a bad touch. But your average touch, I feel like, tells you a lot about how good technically a player is. And he just so perfectly takes it into his path every time. And it's just, I don't know, it gives me like a mini orgasm every time. So thankfully he is 18, so otherwise Ollie would have to turn up with the next insult here. But dear God, Ollie, I'm going to have to put you on timeout in a minute. Bertram, yeah. Are you as impressed as we are? Is he exceeding your expectations? Is he meeting your expectations?
I think he's exceeding them in a way. As I touched upon before, I thought he would be bedded in, but I think he just looks very, very good. And he looked very, very good against Palace as well. The thing is, with him, there are obvious improvements you can make. I think the chance he missed was a view into that. The thing is, I think when you think back, right, a lot of the goals we watched him score for Palmeiras is kind of, dribbles, and then he dribbles a bit more, and then he smashes it in, right? And I think he needs to get used to the fact that in the Premier League, at this level, he won't be able to get that amount of time. That being said, I think his assist for the second goal was outstanding. It was absolutely fantastic. I think we have a real player on our hands here.
Absolutely. 2 out of 3 successful dribbles as well. 2 out of 3 tackles, 1-2, 5 out of 8 ground duels. So this is another thing that I'm very impressed by. And, another one of those where sometimes us, European football fans, we kind of sometimes discredit other leagues for certain things. We're like, they need to be prepared for the physicality in the Premier League. But then we kind of forget about how rough it goes on down there in South America, in the Brazilian league.
Oh, yeah, the Brazilian league.
It's a different kind of physical sometimes than the Prem, like less intensity, less like, full speed for 90 minutes. But the purely the physical impact in terms of like, rough challenges and stuff like that, I don't think there's much in it, if I'm honest. And I mean, I don't know.
And like at the end of the day, he's an 18-year-old, and at the time was a 16-year-old playing with grown adults.
Exactly.
So the physical side of the challenges of the game are going to be pretty similar over here.
Yeah, no, exactly that. But for on his first Premier League start to end up with 5 out of 8 ground duels playing as number 10, I think it's very impressive. A lot of what this guy does is very impressive. I am realizing that in top end speed, he's a little bit slower than I maybe expected. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. It's just like in terms of something you learn about the players, I guess, when you see them compared to the speed in the Premier League rather than say the Brazilian league. Especially when they have, a lot of the kind of older centre backs that had their career in Europe coming back to Brazil. Obviously, it might look a little bit fast against them sometimes. But, I mean, Ollie, speak to me on your end. He's bloody good, that kid, isn't he? Like, it's nice. Like, honestly, when we signed him already, I was like, imagine he's actually the next Neymar. Imagine what that would be like if that's actually him and we just signed him at 16.
It's crazy, I know. But this boy is something special. He is something else. I'm telling you. I don't think I've seen a player, a young player like him, come in through Chelsea and basically perform straight away. Palmer was 20, 21 when he started playing for us, right? Yep. So and he banged immediately. But Estevao's 3 years younger than that, which is insanity. It's 700 odd days younger than, no, more than that, 1,000 odd days younger than Palmer was. And no, he's not having the impact Palmer had straight away. But you can see that there is a high level of impact there. He's ready for this level. He just is the way he moves with the ball. He glides with it. Like, it's like he was born to do this. That's what I genuinely feel like with Estevao. And he's a player that you pay to watch. He's the player you're buying the tickets for. Him and Palmer, those kinds of players, the ones that will get you off your seat. And so hopefully this is the first of many for him.
Exactly. And now we just have to make sure we give him a nice little salary raise every year or two, and every time extend the contract by another 6 years, just to make sure he doesn't end up going to like Barcelona or Real Madrid eventually. Because please don't. Probably not Barcelona with Lamine in that position, but Real Madrid. There you go. I mean, hey, what more praise can we look for? But I do want to look at a few of the other guys in our attack. I want to kind of, obviously we'll touch on Neto a little bit as well. I just have to give him credit. I thought he did well overall, worked out defensively, could have scored one at the end, all well and nice. But I want to talk about Delap because obviously it was his first start in the Premier League. Obviously didn't get to start last week, came off the bench. I'm really kind of not really sure yet. And this is not in necessarily a negative way at all. It's more like he has moments where I'm like, oh, that was brilliant. Like also in helping set up that goal for Enzo Fernandez, helping set up the assist for Estevao. That was a fantastic layoff, fantastic way of using his body, shielding the ball, being a target man. And then there's other moments where I'm like, oh, you look a bit slow, and why aren't you on that ball? But obviously, I have to give it time. It's really interesting. I still feel like we got a situation where we got two strikers that work together and are a better package than Nicholas Jackson was. But I feel like Nicholas Jackson had a bit more than he. It's a bit difficult with Joao Pedro because obviously Joao Pedro was again impressive today in a separate position, but maybe more with Delap. Yeah, I feel like Delap could be really useful. I'm just not as sure how often I want to see him start. Ollie, what do you feel about Liam Delap? Again, we're speaking extremely early. Like we could have very different opinions in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. Obviously, things can change. It's been one start. Everything can be different. We're just judging what we've seen so far. And what I've seen so far, like I say, I like him. I've always liked him. I wanted us to sign him. I wanted him initially to be the backup to Jackson to start the season. But yeah, I would probably prefer him to come off the bench more often than not, but he can also prove me wrong. Where do you stand on that, Ollie?
Yeah, I'm kind of undecided as well. I haven't made my mind up on Delap. I think he's got all the characteristics of a player that you would all really want. He's a bit of a battery ram. He's a bit of a dickhead. He's very physical. He likes to shield the ball with his body. He likes to use his body to hold off defenders. He's a bit of a handful kind of player to play against. And it strikes me that you kind of want that, at least that kind of striker. Jackson kind of does that in a different way. He's just a nuisance all the time, whereas Delap is more of a physical presence. Both of those things will draw a defender's attention. It's just they do it in a different way. And there is something to be said about, first start, when he's played, he's looked all right. He's gotten himself into some nice positions, especially, like you say, for the cutback for whose goal was it? I can't remember. For Joao Pedro's goal, right? Are you muted?
You're muted, Laurenz.
I'm muted. That makes sense. I was like, why is he not hearing me? It was Enzo Fernandez's goal. Estevao.
Sorry, apologies. Yeah, when Enzo Fernandez was ghosting into the box. That was a really nice piece of play from him. And like you say, you see it in dribs and drabs, in circumstances and bits and pieces. I think he's still young. I think he's still got a bit more to prove. I think he's got some improving to do. Yeah, just haven't really made my mind up totally on him. I think like I said, he's got all the ingredients. He's just got to put them together.
Yeah, and I would love if he could work a little bit on his explosiveness, which I'm sure he will work on. And I'm not surprised that this is maybe one of the things that's a difference from a team that gets relegated and a team that's trying to fight for Champions League qualification or better. But where do you stand on it? Obviously, Nene made that important point as well. Delap's work also helped us score those goals from set pieces. Obviously, 2 goals. 3 goals even coming from set pieces. Wasn't Caicedo's one from a set piece as well? So obviously the first one flicked on by Cucurella, Joao Pedro at the kind of back post or in the middle of the goal. And Delap doing a lot of dirty work for those for sure. And that is what he's very useful for. Obviously you want more from your striker than just that. So I'm just curious, where do you stand on Delap, Bertram? And would you like to see him and Joao Pedro be in the same team regularly, or would you like to see this only, while we don't have Simmons yet, and etc.?
I think it's very difficult. I think for some games, Delap could be a weapon. I think the thing with him is I think he'll be much better when we play against a team where there's more space in behind. I think the 2 games he's played so far have been against deep line teams. In when he came on against Palace, if he did come on, and today as well against a deep block, a terrible deep block, but a deep block nonetheless. I just think
want him like that kind of physical presence in a deep block that kind of helps bring it down, because he can convert a half chance or something.
This is what I mean. He does so on the one hand, his physicality is good for the deep blocks, but then Joao Pedro doesn't make runs deep and Delap does. So you want Delap when you have space in behind. So it's it's kind of like 50-50 for each type of opposition for me right now.
Well, I suppose he's all right for it. I think if I were to have, ideally a person for a deep block, it would probably be Joao Pedro. I think Delap is good at it as well. I think he's, maybe his best role, which we saw in the Club World Cup as well, is, for example, the run he made against PSG when he came on against tired legs on the defense who had to push up. His runs in behind, his physicality is going to be very good. Even today when we saw, West Ham actually shift a bit up and he was able to use his hold-up play. I think that's where he's best. I think he can, work well against a D block, which we saw today. As Nene said, he helped us with the set pieces. I think he's all right at it. I think the thing with these two guys is they might just play for, they might have different roles depending on the game. Ideally, I still think we sign Xavi Simons and have these two guys as our striker rotations if Nicholas Jackson is to be sold. But I just think when I watch Delap play, I think there's a player there. I think he's just one of these guys where you watch him, you get a feeling. It's like the same with Enzo those first couple of months. Even though he didn't have many assists, just when you watched him, you could see there was a player there. I get the same feeling when I watch a player like Chalobah, for example. Maybe the stats don't always back it up, but I just feel like I see a good player there. So I'm very happy with Delap so far. I'm firmly in his camp. I think, as Crispy said in the chat, haven't had a player like him since Diego. So, to be honest, even though we're just waiting for, I'm kind of annoyed he got taken off today as well. I think getting a goal for him in this goal fest would have been good, but I think he's a very, very good player.
I also unless it was fitness related, I also didn't understand why it was him that came off. Like you said, he hadn't had a goal yet. Why not take Joao Pedro off rather than having to shift Joao Pedro into a position that he hadn't played for the first 60 minutes? Didn't really see that. Obviously, makes no difference when you win 4-1. Let the manager, I'm sure he had his reasons. But there you go. Now, boys, I did tell both of you before the game started, if you find 2 or 3 things that you want to maybe talk about, potentially a bit niche, so they're not necessarily coming up in the straight match conversation. Could either of you figure a couple out? I'll start with you first, Ollie. Did you have anything kind of interesting that you wanted to touch on from the game?
Yeah, actually, I did. And interestingly, it's something that I thought has been a weakness in previous years, but actually in this game, maybe this season it will be different. And that's the presence of goals from midfield. Today back to back, Enzo Fernandez makes it 3-1. Caicedo makes it 4-1. About 10 minutes either side of half time.
Yeah,
and that takes the game from 2-1 to 4-1. It takes it from, well, they could be back in it if they just get a goal or they get an easy chance or something, to total shutout, they're never coming back. And it's those goals from midfield that you really have to come to rely on in certain games in the season, because that was the difference today between a comfortable win and what might have been a bit of a squeakier bum time towards the end of the game if it was still 2-1. And that allows, players to have a few more minutes. Like, we subbed on a bunch of players and stuff towards the end of the game, so lots of minutes to share around. It made it comfortable for the manager to be able to feel he could do that, and that's just good squad planning. It's good for the season, like over the long term. So the more goals we can get from midfield to be able to change those games, the better. It's always nice to see Caicedo get one because it's a rare one, but Fernandez, Enzo, he got one and he probably should have got another one.
Yeah, he really should have done, yeah.
If you blazed that second cutback off the left over the bar, I think it was in the second half.
Yeah, just after half time, I think, yeah.
Yeah, just after half time. It's really nice to see him arriving late as well in the box and or on the edge of the box to see if he can do his best Frank Lampard impression. And because he's really good at it. Like Enzo Fernandez is a box crasher. It's so clear to see from last season and this season. So it's nice to see him and Caicedo chipping in. I'd be interested to see how Andre Santos fits in when he comes on, because he's obviously a goal threat as well. So in theory, we've got a lot of goals from midfield this season. That's a really positive sign.
That is a really positive sign, and I think it's actually a very good point to bring up today, because obviously Enzo Fernandez got quite a few goals last season already. But last season, the way he played today, the position he played today, wasn't like he played mostly last season, right? Or even in preseason, where he's usually like in possession, one of the 10s. But today, he was kind of an out-and-out midfielder, if you will, and then still getting those goals. So, excuse me, I think it's a good point to bring up. Bertram, do you have a point to bring up that you found quite interesting from the game, mate? Well, obviously, let me know if you guys have more or less in the private chat, I guess. But yeah, did you have anything that you want to touch on, Bertram, from that perspective?
I think it's a bit of an extension of Ollie's, really. I think we've just added goals in general, to be fair. I think, as Ollie touched upon, the goals from midfield with both Enzo and Caicedo, also something we saw last season, but just the fact that we continue to see that from both of them, even though, Caicedo's was more or less maybe a coincidence, still is good to have. And I think, as I touched upon before as well, just having set pieces. I think having a team which can score from set pieces, having a team which, our striker can score, our midfielders can score. I just think it gives us so much in the fact that who are you going to mark, in a sense?
Mm-hmm. You can't stop everybody.
Exactly. So I think just the adding of goals as well, and the fact that just something feels in the air with this team. I think another point is we feel box office again, in a way. I think you look at the kids, the players. There's something about it. And the fact that we went down early to a screamer, but then immediately scored a jammy corner kick, scored a tap in from Pedro Neto, who I thought was very good tonight. I think there's just something about the team and the characters in this team, and I think the personality of them as well. Which big shout out to Willie Issa as well for his work behind the
everyone
scenes.
needs a big Willie.
Big Willie. But I think those
big Willie.
My first 2 points will be those two.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually a good point. I would really love to see us do the haka before every game, by the way. Like, if Willie wants to get that going, that would be fun as well. See, my little takeaway from the game that isn't maybe as standard to talk about is actually how strong we were from set pieces. Now, obviously, 3 from our goals came from set pieces. We created 0.49 XG from set pieces. Now, I think it was 2, maybe just one of the goals that West Ham conceded last week against Sunderland that was also from set pieces. So the likelihood is that West Ham are just really bad at defending set pieces, rather than that it's now a conclusion that we are so fantastic at this and going to be.
I think they're just really bad in general, to be fair.
True. They were just bad. But, you would think that they, playing 3 centre-backs, having Souček in the team, having Füllkrug in the team, they've got a lot of big guys in there. Like, you'd think that they defend their set pieces better. But, we knew it under Graham Potter ourselves. Under Graham Potter, you're not very good at defending set pieces, unfortunately. But I thought that was a big positive, actually, today, in terms of, I don't know, because this was something, defending set pieces already got good last season, and we kind of stopped scaring me every time the opposition got a corner or free kick. It was still sometimes an issue, but in the grand scheme of things, it stopped scaring me compared to the Poch season. But if we can now start to add more regularly goals from set pieces ourselves as well, I think that could be a bit of a game changer. I can't lie. I think it could be a bit of a game changer. Ollie, have you got another one?
Yeah, I've got one more thing to mention, just in general. I think, and it's more of a negative point, but it's really just a nitpick considering the result today. But I thought almost none of our defenders had a great game. Like I thought almost all of them, even the ones who came on in the second half, struggled to a certain degree. Maybe Reece James did the best out of everybody when he came on. Gusto looked all right. Tosin obviously made a few shaky errors, especially in that first 20 minutes or so. Chalobah was just sort of here and there all game. I didn't notice him a lot. Fofana was really poor when he came back on. I know it's the first minutes he's played in a while, but he struggled. Cucurella was okay. Hato struggled, I thought, when he came on. It's just, for me, it was like, I'm pleased that we're getting everyone minutes to sort of bed in a game like this, where there's relatively little risk, with sort of half an hour to go to bring on who you want to bring on and share the minutes around. But it does also concern me that, like, almost all of our defenders today did struggle a little bit when challenged against what it might turn out to be one of the worst teams in the Premier League this season. So there's something to be said about that needs tightening up at the back. It says a lot, I think, about Colwill and how good he has been for us, and how maybe even underrated he might have become for us as a result of kind of going under the radar. But yeah, I don't think it's any reason necessarily to panic yet either. I think it's just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, that is fair. I think in a game like today, you notice that we changed it up a little bit. I felt you noticed that in the beginning of the game with the defensive issues that we had. There was quite a lot of changes to what usually happens. Like, we almost always play an inverted midfielder next to Caicedo rather than Enzo and Caicedo next to each other. You also in the team had a lot of new boys. Like, you had Estevao, you had Joao Pedro, you had Delap all starting. Delap and Estevao playing the 2 10s, which in moments require actually quite a bit of running back and helping out the midfield in certain moments. And I feel like the combination of all of those factors is probably why at the beginning kind of we struggled a little bit until we settled the marker down, rather than, for me at least, Ollie, it being necessarily on the defenders as such. But
yeah, I just think that
the way the game was, it wasn't like defenders weren't like the shot from Paqueta, like that they didn't even get to the defenders.
No,
right? Like we discussed, it was Caicedo not closing down, and
no, but what I'm kind of getting at
is
it wasn't just that first 20 minutes.
Feel like it was an individual issue. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but it wasn't just that first 20 minutes, and like the last sort of half an hour, like especially with some of the boys who came on and things, I didn't think they did that well either, and we were well settled by that stage. So it's just like there's something to be said there, I think, about, just making sure we shore up defensively. We got to make sure that we're tough to beat in every aspect, because if we give teams easy goals and we give them easy chances, we'll get punished in a lot of other games against tougher opposition, and we might not be able to score 5 to still win the game. So, we just got to. There are going to be points this season, I think, where we've really got to grind out the ugly wins and get good defensively if we want to drive up the table. And because you can't outscore a bad defense, it just doesn't work that way.
No,
so
it's true.
It's just something to keep an eye on. Like I said, not a disaster.
We had the third best defense in the league last season at the end of the season. So it's kind of a table also says doesn't play great through passes. Chalobah scored and Kukurea assisted. I guess if you look at it that way, it looks like
all right. There is something to be said about that,
especially for the second half. At the same time, I'm like, well, we changed the left back, we changed the right centre back, and we changed the right back. Is it if you change 3 of the 4 of the back 4? Is that a surprise that maybe the last 20 minutes don't look as good if you change 3 of
maybe?
The 4?
Like I said, it's more of a nitpick than anything. It's just they just didn't quite look comfortable.
Yeah, that is spot on.
If I can quickly jump in on this, I think as well, the things you're touching about. I think the goal which they scored, the Paqueta one, which didn't get to the defense. I think the Fulker one, which was eventually overruled as offside, I think is more of a rest defense issue than just a defender's issue. I think it'll be tough to pin on those two exactly, and I think I do agree with you that in the last 20 minutes we weren't looking all too hot defensively. I think especially the Callum Wilson chance, the one which Caicedo cleared off the line. I think it's important to also remember that Fofana back after a long-term injury, and Hato, which is more or less his debut for us. So I think those are some of the elements that need to go into to the thinking when think about why we looked so defensively frail at the end.
And I think we also can't forget, again, I said it after the Crystal Palace game, obviously there we dropped points, it was more of a talking point, but especially when you talk about towards the end of the game, we had 2 weeks pre-season. West Ham had 6 or 7. Especially in the end of games, you're probably going to feel that. Again, against Palace, it just felt like as a whole, we looked slow and lacked explosivity and freshness, sharpness that you usually gain through preseason. Today was more like the longer the game went on, we looked a bit tired, but at the same time, we were 5-1 up. So am I going to be mad at the team for taking the foot off the gas a little bit? I get Ollie's point, obviously, if you want to win the league and everything. But if you want to win the league and you're 5-1 up, then you've done your job for the day. You know what I mean? You're not going to concede.
For sure. Like I said, it's just a nitpick at the end of the day about just something.
No. Again, I don't see a problem with what you said at all. It's just, there can be a problem, and sometimes there's reasons, and I guess just debating what the reasons may or may not be.
Like you say, like maybe we rotated so heavily, like you said, because there was that understanding that we're not quite as fit, ahead of the season. We're not quite as sharp as some of the other teams, so we do need to dig into the bench a bit more.
Exactly, and we obviously didn't have like the first teamers. They will get match fit by playing the matches, but the guys that don't play as many minutes, they need to get match fit somehow as well. And I guess when you are 5-1 up, 4-1 up, then you have the opportunity to make a few more changes and give more significant minutes to bench players. Bertram, take me to your next kind of little takeaway from the game that isn't maybe as commonly spoken about in the match chat. What is that about, man?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the characters of the team when you look at it, because today we had both our captain out in Rich James and Cole Palmer. So just when you're looking at it from from the lineup perspective, you're missing 2 very, very key players. But when I was just looking through the lineup after the game, you see some of the characters we have in. You have a Liam Delap who makes himself known that he's there. A Joao Pedro, an Enzo, a Kukurea. So when you look through the characters of the team, you can see that there are some big characters in it already who are going to shout in the face of these West Ham players when they play them and they go in. And I think it's going to be very important for this team going forward as well, not to be relying on a player like Cole Palmer, who, you know, is very good and is going to be very influential for us, but not having the feeling that we're, you know, the Cole Palmer team, because, you know, sometimes we're going to play without him, like we did at the Emirates under Poch when we got pumped 5-0 because we had no focal point when he wasn't there. So I think there's something to be said about the fact that the team today, you know, we kind of lacked in leaders. We lacked in maybe, you know, our star players, or our star player at least, and the rest of the team showed up. I think that'll give the team some confidence. It'll give Cole Palmer maybe a kick up the backside. Not that he needs it, you know, for now at least, but, you know, to say, okay, I'm not always going to start. Maybe I need to show my A levels to get game time here. So I think that's going to be very important. I was very happy to see the response we you know, we kind of showed after going 1-0 down, because that could have been a catalyst for a very, very bad night for us tonight.
100%. And I think, well, first of all, I agree. Like, obviously, I think you should have also mentioned Tosin and Chalobah. I actually think we had a good bunch of leaders on the pitch, other than Reece James. But obviously, Reece James makes a big difference. Less so when he became captain, but I love to see how much he grew into this role. And totally natural, really. He became captain and then basically was injured for 2 years straight. How do you learn to be a captain when you're 23 years old and can never play? You know, of course, it would have taken a little bit of time of actually learning to be the captain when also playing. And I think you're starting to see that more and more and more. But on Cole Palmer's absence, what Maresca said post-game on Palmer's situation, supposedly he had picked up some sort of groin issue. Cole, in the last 4 or 5 days, Maresca said, was not 100%. Today, he tried to join in the warm-up, but he felt something. We prefer not to take any risks of it getting worse, and we will see in the next hours if it is something important or not. He also goes on to say it was already probably the Crystal Palace game. We was not 100%. He has tried to make a big effort for the club, the team, and for the fans because he's really keen about the team. Tonight, he tried again, but he was not feeling very good, which also is interesting. If he wasn't at 100% against Palace, maybe explains why he wasn't at his best against Palace as well. So I do find
also
that interesting.
Explains maybe why we were so good with Estevao today, if Maresca planned for it in advance.
Yeah. It didn't feel like Estevao was completely shocked that he might have to play. I mean, and that certainly
he looked unfazed either way, didn't he?
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. Just quickly, as we're on Maresca comments on Estevao, he did say, we conceded the goal because he lost the ball in the build-up, but he needs these mistakes to learn. Overall, he impressed. Obviously, I'm sure he said a bit more, but that is obviously the quote that goes out in the end. And the others are obviously about Cole Palmer, like we discussed. Now, I did have something in mind that I wanted to touch on earlier, but now I obviously can't remember. So I can't think of that. Let's see if the physical stats have shown up on FOTMob yet. Unfortunately not. That is a bit of a stinker. They need to start being quick. It's all nice and good that you do this, but if it takes 3 hours out of the game, not really helpful to anybody from that perspective. But there you go. Now, just as the last few bits and bobs, I kind of, to touch on something you touched on earlier, Bertram, in terms of you'd hope we'd sign Xavi Simons before we signed Garnacho. Honestly, I think in the end, they both end up in and around transfer deadline day. Whether one ends up before or after, I don't think it has much of an impact. They will both play for the first time after the international break, presumably. But obviously, after we conceded the first goal, the group chat and a lot of Twitter was like, this is why we need a new goalkeeper. There's still time to get a new goalkeeper, this and that. The same you could argue for the centre-back situation. Obviously, Maresca supposedly wants a centre-back. The club don't really want to give him one. He now has kind of started to talk the way the club is. I've only ever wanted to look for an internal solution. We've got a week left in the transfer window. Where do you see the big, important kind of construction sites, I guess, in the team? Is it goalie? Is it centre-back? Is it... Well, it is those two, but the two we are signing are left winger, which we still need as well, mind you. Like, we do need a left winger. But yeah, I mean, I'll start with you, Ollie. Has today shifted your mind? Like, has it reinforced your opinion we need a goalie? Has it reinforced your opinion we need a centre-back? Where do you stand on that?
I think for me, it reinforced definitely we need a centre-back. I think people will say what they want about Sanchez and the goal today, whether they blame him or whether they don't. We probably needed to replace him anyway. I think after the Club World Cup, he probably earned the right to at least have a go at number one, but clearly he's just struggling. He seems like he is more of a cup keeper overall. So maybe we do need to dip into the market. It's centre-back. It's certainly centre-back because of the injury issues we've got now. It's certainly goalkeeper just because of the legacy issue of Sanchez. I personally feel, depending on what you want to do, it's not necessarily the worst thing if you want to go get a left winger, because Tyreek George is probably going out on loan, and so then who have you got there? Gittins, Neto plays both sides, and you've got Estevao and Palmer on the right, mostly, but they also play in the middle. So it's not a huge amount of cover, so I don't mind us going for a left winger. I'd prefer if it wasn't Garnacho. It's probably going to be Garnacho. I think we also probably do need that 10, that kind of left-sided 10 player as well in Xavi Simons, to be honest, because I feel like, contrary to what I said earlier, I think you do want Joao Pedro playing that little bit closer to goal, just from what we've seen from him in terms of goal scoring so far.
And you also need options, right? Like as soon as Palmer is unavailable, like you saw today, the only player we had to come on there was Andre Santos. Now, obviously, we could have pushed Enzo up higher, and then it would have been a bit more natural. But even still, the principle is still there. So I do agree.
The thing is, for me, is like we clearly have to sell to buy, and that means you've got to get rid of Nkunku and Jackson, and that's just not going to be easy with a week left to go in the window. And I'm not sure we get all that done. So I think we've resigned ourselves to the fact that Sanchez is going to be the starting keeper this season. I don't think the club have indicated as any different. Centre back, maybe if something comes up. Left winger certainly is coming in, and then Siemens seems to depend totally on outgoing. So I think if it's anyone, it will be Siemens and Garnacho before it's anyone else, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it will be those two if it's before it's anybody else. I mean, then it says, is there any central centre back available that we would want? I would like Ribeiro from Lille. He seems like a kind of good middle ground option. That's good, reasonably young, but not reasonably, but reasonably old enough. He's 25, kind of a middle ground player that I'm like, if Cobble comes in, you can just have him as the backup, get rid of Badiashile or something like that. I think that would make sense, but the club clearly aren't going for that. Bertram, do you stand on the transfer situation similar to Oli, where like we need a left attacking mid, we need a left winger, we would also maybe need a couple of others, but that's not all quite going to happen.
I think I do agree with you guys on the fact that I do think we need a winger, and I think Siemens is a very, very good option for a role that he is going to get play time. It's difficult because it's not like we need a player there, but he will definitely get game time. He will be very good for us. He maybe even wants to switch. They got pumped 6-0 today by Bayern, so he might have gone home, seen us. The thing is, I always think that having a good goalkeeper is essential to challenging for anything because it just gives the defense confidence, right? I just, at the same time, think that Sanchez has somehow impressed me enough to over the last couple of months to suggest that I think he should be trusted. I think, as I touched upon today, I'm not really worried about the goal we conceded. It's unfortunate, sure, but if I were to go out, if I were wanting us to go and get a goalkeeper, I'd want us to not miss. I'd want us to get an Allison type goalkeeper. And for me right now, there isn't really one that I would, that's a surefire bet. I think with center back, it's different because I don't hate our options now, but it all depends on the fact of Fofana being fit and being able to reach a level. If he isn't able to reach a level, I think an option would be Gurhi from Crystal Palace. I think he'd be perfect. I can't believe we haven't done it already, to be honest. But
dirt
if
cheap
he
as well.
Badiashile, exactly, and if he and Badiashile are able to, maybe stay fit, I would trust our defense. But we don't have any evidence to suggest that. So I think
it's weird obviously
overall,
because
I
would not want Fofana or Badiashile in that centre back role. So then it's like Tosin or Achampong. But then some part of me is like, well, give the chance to Josh, see how it goes. But at the same time, obviously, we had that little Instagram drama with Fofana where he supposedly, it's a thing he does every year, where he gets rid of his everyday match day posts and then just leaves highlights on. And everybody's like, oh, he deleted all his Chelsea pictures. It's just because he hasn't got any highlights for us because he is permanently injured. So it's a bit unfortunate. But when that happened, I was like, I mean, if we can sell him and use him and buy a different centre back, I'm like, at his peak, I think he's very good. If he can stay fit, he would be a great centre back. But the likelihood of him staying fit, I feel like I would be happy to risk he potentially stays now fit and we sign somebody else on him. But who signs him, right? And Marseille is such a mess. As much as it's his boyhood club, would he even want to go there right now? Especially, obviously, with the wages that he's on at Chelsea, Marseille ain't paying that. So, it's a good one. Just quickly,
you would trust, but at our current state, just quickly, at our current state, you would bet money on us, being able to keep him fit. It was more or less a freak injury that put him out for the season. And we've seen what we've done with likes of Reece James, with
it was a hamstring injury, and then
injury?
he was supposed to have surgery, and he said no, he doesn't want to, and then he came back, and then he got injured again, and then he had the surgery.
No, what
That's
Bertram means is
true,
it's a freak injury because he was a freak about it.
Exactly.
I think you mixed it up. The season before was a freak injury.
That might have been that might be correct, but the team is the club have at least shown that they've been able to keep a player like Joao Pedro, Pedro Neto and Reece James to stay relatively fit. So I would give him another chance. But if he keeps doing this for a season or two more, or a season at the maximum, definitely get lost.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that actually, and I think because of what they've shown with Reece James, I think it is worth a try. But at the same time, it's like if we have a lot more right centre-back types and a lot less central centre-back types, and we need to get rid of a centre-back to buy a different centre-back, I think I would be okay with doing it. Seemingly the club aren't going to anyway, but I would just saying I would be okay with it. Just as the last point, Bertram, because you said you don't see a goalie out there. So Maignan wouldn't have fulfilled that for you either had we signed him earlier in the window?
Whenever I see him, he doesn't really instill confidence in me, to be fair.
See,
I think he's fine.
Like, I'm not saying he's still better than Sanchez, but I actually agree with what you're saying.
I just think he just flaps around too much. I think he has his moments, but I think I don't need a goalkeeper who has his moments. I need a goalkeeper who doesn't have bad moments.
Back in the day. I'm not sure if you're old enough to really remember these, but
it's a fair comparison, I would say. I've seen the highlights. But even the game we played at Stamford Bridge, he just doesn't instill confidence in me. I think more realistically, I just want even a goalkeeper like Mamardashvili, I think would have been a good shout, but he's been snapped up by Liverpool. But I think just that is one of the positions you need to be confident on. And if anything, I think Mike Penders, if he has a good season, might just be the shout.
Yeah, well, so I thought with Petrovic as well, and then he had a good
picked up a knock though,
chance, but then he looks terrible for Bournemouth now anyway, at least in the first game. So yeah,
hasn't Penders picked up a knock as well? Did anyone else see that?
Has he? That must have been yesterday because he played.
It was just a knock. There's no reason to be be overly worried.
No panicking. Cool. Good to know.
That is good to know. I mean, yeah, I still think that with the possibility of Ederson leaving Man City, if we were acting like a normal club, not like with a child fetish, I think we should really try everything to get Ederson, really. But seemingly that's not going to happen. So we have to just stand with Sanchez and hope on the days where he makes mistakes, the strikers score more goals than he makes mistakes, I guess. What else can we do? I don't want to, Muli, I appreciate you talking about Gittins and Taibu as well. Honestly, we're going to wrap this up now. If I speak about Gittins now, people will just call me a hater again. So maybe the less said, the better about him today. But I think this leaves it quite well. Gittins is the right-footed Madueke. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you very, very much for tuning in, all of you. Subscribe if you haven't done that yet. We'll be massively appreciated. Hit the like button. Of course, do check out Ollie and his podcast. You can see both of his ads on the screen at Ollie J. Carpenter and at The Bridge Pod for all your latest podcast needs, as well as mine and Pice's podcast. Link is also down in the description to both of those. Of course, check out Bertram as well. It doesn't tweet as regularly, but big up Bertram. Thank you very much for coming on and also sharing your goalkeeper expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Up the Chelsea, upwards and onwards, and I will see you next time.